What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? DoctorDDub here, and today we're going to talk about fishing in FarmFolks. In the recent April update to the FarmFolks pre-alpha demo, a very bare-bones version of fishing was added to the game. It allows for the use of bait to catch fish, the actual catching of fish, and the ability to turn those fish into useful resources, or at least that is the intent. As it currently stands, there are 3 locations to fish at that are home to several different fish, each of which is unique to each of the 3 locations. The first of those locations is the river, spanning from the southern waterfall right next to the natural stone bridge to the other waterfall to the northeast of your farm, near the cave entrance. Another location that fish can be found is the ocean, which spans, well, the shoreline. And lastly, the final place you can catch fish is in the newly added cave. There is also a tiny pond right next to the player's home that can be fished in, though these fish are the exact same as those that can be found in the river. At this time, there are only 6 fish that can be caught, though you can expect to find many more as development continues. As you might be able to guess, with only 6 fish and 3 zones to catch them in, you can find 2 unique fish in each of the 3 fishing locations. In the river, you can catch the aptly named river pike, as well as the cute and adorable derpfish, which, despite having made an appearance all the way back when the initial Kickstarter trailer was released, somehow made it into the game as a placeholder asset. I can assure you though, the derpfish will look much less terrifying and much more adorable upon release. Moving on to the ocean, you can find both the brightly colored and scaly diggerfish, in addition to the sand swimmer, which, just like the derpfish, is currently using an interesting placeholder. Lastly, we have the cave, which is arguably home to some of the more interesting fish. First up is the elocell, which, in my opinion, looks like an ugly purple anglerfish without the dangly light in front of its face. Despite that though, I still think it looks pretty awesome. And last but not least is the deep water catfish, made up of nothing but bones. Hey guys, Doc from the future here. So it turns out there's actually 8 fish, not 6, or should I say at least 8, because I'm not even sure I've caught them all. I went back to record some more footage for a clip later in this video, and in the process caught a rare fish in the ocean. So naturally, I went and spent entirely too long trying to catch more, assuming there was one in the cave and river as well. The one I caught in the ocean is called a sand scale glyphosine, but unfortunately I wasn't recording at the time. This is what it looks like though, and it's easily my favorite fish so far. I managed to catch the really difficult fish in the cave as well, which is called a rock lobster. This one I was recording for, and oh my goodness, is it a tough fish to fry. A rock lobster? From the sample size of 1 that I'm working with, which isn't much to go by, I'm going to guess that you need to get a fishing score of at least 80 to successfully catch one of these fish, as well as the other rare fish. I narrowly managed to catch it with a score of 81. Unfortunately, I couldn't catch anything in the river though, and it's not that I couldn't catch the rare fish that's there, it's that I couldn't even get it to bite. I caught over 50 river pike and derpfish combined and didn't even get a nibble from a rare fish. So if any of you find it and manage to catch it, please let me know. Alright, back to the present. In addition to these 6 fish, you can also catch one more item, a sunken chest, which has a tooltip that reads, "What could be inside?" hinting that there are various items you can get from them. Upon opening one, I was rewarded with 881 shells. During my time fishing, I only managed to catch 3 of these, and all 3 times I caught them alongside a fish, not instead of a fish. I personally caught 2 of mine in the river and 1 in the cave, but one of my friends caught one in the ocean as well, so I'm going to assume they can be found everywhere fish are available to be caught, at least for the time being. Alright though, that covers what can be caught, but now let's turn our attention to how they can be caught. First off, you'll need to pick up the fishing rod from right next to the pond by the player's home. From there, with the fishing rod selected, head to a body of water and left click. With any luck, a fish will bite, though it's not guaranteed every time. Keep in mind, not all of the fishing animations or sounds have been added yet, so this whole experience is going to feel a little off. When a fish bites, you'll see a little fishing minigame pop up where you have to use A and D on your keyboard to move the gray bar left and right to try and line it up with the black bar, which in this case is supposed to represent the fish. If you're able to keep the gray bar above the black, you'll see a number in the upper left corner of the screen slowly increase. If you mess up, the number will pause but not decrease until you realign the two bars once again. This goes on for a predetermined amount of time, and from the testing I've done, it appears that you'll catch a fish if you're able to get the number above 50. With the exception of one fish, which I wasn't able to catch at even 70 and above. Anything below 50 though, and you'll be told that the fish got away. Just be careful not to click outside of the fishing window once the minigame starts, as the game pretty much treats it as a separate window, and if you do so, none of your inputs will be recorded, but simply clicking back on the minigame window will fix this. That's the fishing minigame in its entirety though, so let's now take a look at how the devs said it would be implemented back in November's Kickstarter update and see how close they came to their goals. From shore to shore and all across Softshore, the player will find rivers, lakes, and beaches just begging to be fished in. Check. FarmFolks plans to be home to a multitude of fish, both freshwater and saltwater. They're still adding more, but check. The player will obtain their first fishing rod from the island's master fisher, and from there, upgraded fishing rods can be acquired that will enable the player to catch larger and rarer fish. We're not quite there yet, but that's entirely due to the fact that we're still so early on in development. The mechanics of fishing are as follows. Fishing will be a simple minigame. Double check. Yes, absolutely. Once the player casts their line, they will need to wait for a fish to take a nibble and get hooked onto the line. Check, minus the animations. From there, the player will have to pay attention to prompts on screen and move their fishing rod according to the direction the fish is pulling before it gets to the shoreline. Check. So for the most part, they nailed what they were aiming to accomplish with the mechanics of the fishing system. But in my book, they still fall short. Let me explain what I mean by comparing it to a fishing system many of you are probably familiar with, whether you like it or not, that of Stardew Valley. Before I go any further though, I want to clarify that I'm not going to be discussing the visuals, as those are going to be changing quite a bit, and instead I want to focus on the ideas behind the system, as those are much less likely to change unless we, the community, speak up as well as provide some ideas on how to fix them. In Stardew Valley, you also cast your line out, wait for a bite, and then begin a very similar fishing minigame. In Stardew Valley, though, it's a vertical line with a bar you move up and down to stay on top of the fish. In FarmFolks, it's shaped more like a speedometer, where the bar is semicircular, and you try to keep your meter in line with the one underneath it. In theory, these are very similar systems. In practice, though, not at all. My biggest issue with this system is its unreliability. In Stardew Valley, you're either on the fish or you're not. There's not a whole lot of middle ground. However, when you take that bar and make it semicircular, as is the case in FarmFolks, it's a whole lot harder to tell when you're on the fish, or the black bar in this case. Do I need to have the tip of the gray bar within the tip of the black bar to actively reel in a fish? No, I don't. What about 90% of it? Not really. What about 80%? Maybe. 70%? I think so. Hopefully you get my point. To further illustrate this, the image on the left is what it looks like when you're successfully reeling in a fish, while the image on the right is what it looks like when you're not reeling it in at all. Pretty similar, huh? And to piggyback off this issue, in Stardew Valley, when you're unsuccessfully catching a fish, the progress bar directly underneath your fishing bar starts to decrease, an obvious visual indication that you're not making progress. On the other hand, in FarmFolks, when you're trying to catch a really difficult fish, and you're focusing in on that fishing meter really intently to make sure you're on top of that black bar, you can't see the numbers ticking way off to the left, so you have no idea if you're doing well or not. If they choose to stick with this system, that progress indicator needs to move right next to the meter so it can be easily seen while fishing. But at the same time, maybe I just suck at fishing. Who knows? The last aspect to fishing that I currently have an issue with is its predictability. Again, using Stardew Valley for comparison, every time you are fishing and you come across a rare, difficult fish to catch, you know it right away because of the way the bobber moves. It goes all over the place and it's a randomized, more difficult pattern than normal, that's different every single time. If that same fish were to bite again, its pattern would still be just as difficult, but it wouldn't be the exact same pattern as the last one you caught, or attempted to catch. In FarmFolks, every single fish has a predetermined pattern that never changes. Meaning if you memorize every fishing pattern of every fish, you can have a 100% catch rate and know exactly what you're going to catch before you catch it. I realize that some people might like this, but for me personally, as someone who is planning on spending entirely too much time with this game, I can see that getting stale, and fast. But enough of that. We've talked about all the different fish currently available and how you'll go about catching them, as well as some of the issues that I currently see with the whole system. But where can you go to see your accomplishments? Luckily for you, the Farmer's Log has just the thing. By pressing L on your keyboard, you'll be able to bring up the Farmer's Log, which will eventually house all sorts of stats on farming, fishing, and many more items that will give us completionists something to strive for. But for now, it is home only to some fishing stats. There are currently 3 pages of stats which can be navigated between using the buttons in the lower left and right corners. Each page has room for stats on 6 fish, so 18 in total, but as of now, we only have 6 fish in the game, so at most, you'll be able to complete a third of this log. As you catch a certain fish over and over, you'll learn more and more about it. The first time you catch it, you'll simply learn its name. The second time, you'll discover its quality, as indicated by the color border around it. Catch it a third time, and you'll learn what habitat it can be found in. The fourth time, you'll discover what seasons it can be caught in. On the 5th catch, you'll learn what weather conditions it can be found during, and lastly, the 6th time you catch it, you'll discover what type of bait it prefers, presumably increasing the chances of catching that fish over others in that area when that type of bait is used. And yes, right now the formatting is really wacky for this data entry, so good luck reading what type of bait it prefers. And speaking of bait, you are supposedly able to craft bait, though I didn't attempt to do so due to my frustrations encountered with some of the other processors, which I'll explain in a bit. Bait can be made at the bait granulator, however, which requires 20 birch logs to create. Don't mind the obviously placeholder texture of it. At the bait granulator, you can produce 6 different types of bait: seedy, fruity, fishy, leafy, stringy, and rocky, all of which have 1 input slot for their production, while the rocky bait has 2. Like I said though, I didn't play around with this at all due to the issues I had with another processor, but once things get ironed out a bit more and some of the various systems become a little more solidified, you can bet I'll be making a video on everything you need to know about the subject. And not only can you make bait to help you catch fish, but once you've caught those fish, they can be processed into other goods. Or at least you're supposed to be able to. This fish processor was the cause of my frustrations, by the way, but it's not all bad news. I spent a good 10 minutes or so trying different fish in different combinations with different recipes, of which there's quite a few. With the fish processor, you're currently able to create scales, bones, claws, and eel skin, all of which can come in common, uncommon, and rare varieties. That's 12 different recipes, and with each only requiring 1 item as an input, presumably the 6 different fish, that left me with a massive 72 different combinations to try. Turns out, there's even more than that. After spending all that time unsuccessfully trying to get this processor to work, I realized I had no idea what I was doing, so I reached out to the devs. Apparently, you have to wait 1 in-game hour after putting an item in to see if it works or not. And not only that, but you can put several items in at a time as long as they're all the same item. The only successful recipe, and this is one that was shared with me by the devs, not one I was able to figure out on my own, was to use 5 derp fish and try to make common scales. I could tell it was working by the blue bar filling up little by little every hour, but once it finished, nothing happened. The derp fish disappeared and I got nothing in return. I expressed my concerns with this processor to the devs and was told that they're aware that it's not intuitive at all at the moment, and that they are working on fixing that. Thank goodness. If you had a different experience though, or were able to get it working, by all means, please let me know. Like I mentioned previously, I plan on revisiting fishing once it has received the polish that it so well deserves, and do a more comprehensive video at that time. Until then, this is the fishing system we're left with. I realize I've been very critical of the whole system, but like I said, our opinions can only be heard if we speak up, and this is my way of doing just that. But don't get me wrong, I'm still very excited for fishing in FarmFolks. There are so many missing features to the whole experience that I'm looking forward to, like being able to upgrade your fishing rod, cook the fish that you catch and use them in various cooking recipes, and even use some of them as bait to hunt and trap some of the island's wildlife. That's something I've personally never seen in a farming sim before, so that's easily what I'm most excited about. Alright though, ladies and gentlemen, I hope this has shed some light on the fishing system for you all, and if you have any questions, thoughts, or opinions regarding the fishing system, the fishing minigame, or anything fishing related, please make sure to drop them in the comments section so I can do my best to answer any questions and help relay any feedback to the developers. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like and subscribe for more FarmFolks content, as I'll be back with more real soon. Until then though, as always, take care.